I'm making one of my favorite and easiest dishes, fried Asian style cabbage. This dish costs basically nothing, comes together super fast, and somehow still tastes absolutely amazing. It's simple, it's affordable, and it's proof you don't need a long grocery list to make something you actually want to eat. Just a head of cabbage and a bunch of ingredients you probably already have on hand. For the full ingredient list, check the description box below, but enough talking, let's get cooking. I wanted to show all the ingredients all together because this is everything that goes in there. So all you're gonna need is a head of cabbage, 1 onion, a couple cloves of garlic. With the scallions, we're just gonna use the greens, and I'm gonna shred up 2 carrots. And then to season it, really simple, just some soy sauce, some rice vinegar, and some sesame oil, all of the usual suspects that go like in Asian flavored things. In addition to this, some oil and some salt and some pepper, but that's it. This stuff is super simple, and I usually have all these things on hand all the time, so it's really easy just to throw this dish together, and it is our vegetable dish for dinner. The prep for the cabbage is easy. I usually don't wash cabbage. I will take the outer leaves off, but I'm gonna cut off the bottom, and I usually find that cabbage is like such a tight vegetable that there's really no reason to wash it beyond just taking off some of the outer leaves. So usually when I'll prep a cabbage, I'll cut off the bottom because that part can get a little bit dirty, but I try to leave most of the core intact so it holds the cabbage all together. And now from here, I'll just slice off like a good chunk of it, and we'll see how much this is going to give us. Because cabbage, what it's great about is it's so packed and so condensed, and once you start slicing it up, the volume starts getting really big. Before I cut this up, I'm just gonna take off the little stem that goes through. And now in no particular way, I'm just gonna like start cutting like strips of it. And usually what I like to do is like cut a few one way and then cut a few the other way and then start working through the cabbage like that. And with a recipe like this, like you don't have to be like very exact. Once you start cooking everything down, it's gonna all start to blend together and you won't see any like exactness of the cuts. So I don't know, this is probably a little light on the cabbage. I'm probably gonna cut up just a little bit more. So I'll just cut like another chunk off of this and pat out the amount of cabbage. You probably want to aim for what looks like too much cabbage because cabbage cooks down really easily. It's just like spinach. You'll start off with a lot, and then by the time you're done, you almost have none. You want to really fill this entire bowl up with cabbage. And now from here, we'll cut up an onion really similarly. The onion, just like the cabbage, it softens and then caramelizes nice, and that's why these things pair up really nicely. And I'm just gonna cut the onion lengthwise into thin strips. And we're gonna mix this right in with the cabbage. So now the rest of the prep we're gonna keep separate from the cabbage and the onions that we can mix together. So we'll take a couple cloves of this garlic, we'll remove the skin, trim off the root end, smash, and mince. So now for our carrots, first we gotta peel them. A lot of times people, when they grow their own carrots, they can avoid the peeling step. But if you're getting supermarket carrots, they are a little grimy on the outside, and it always makes sense to take that peel off, unless you're going to the organic farmer's market and getting the super nice carrots. But these are just your regular supermarket carrots. The price of food is out of control right now, so if I gotta use the cheap carrots, I'm using the cheap carrots. But if anybody wants to gift me some really nice farmer's market carrots, I will be more than likely to take those carrots and use them. This is where we're going to use one of the kitchen gadgets that I find super helpful. I'm not a big gadget guy. This is the Japanese mandolin, so it's got these little blades that insert on the bottom, and it allows you to matchstick these carrots with 0 effort. If you don't have one of these, I highly suggest getting one. I use this all the time. And while you're getting one, don't forget to get a cut glove, because this is where I give the little PSA about like, never use a mandolin without a cut glove. It's one of the most dangerous, it's very useful, but it's a very, very dangerous tool, and I would never use a mandolin without it because you get a little cocky, you start moving fast, and the next thing you know, you got to go to the emergency room with your fingertip wrapped up in a paper towel. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to push these carrots through, and this is going to give us a nice matchstick for this cabbage recipe. And you can see how easily we took that carrot and shredded it down into nice matchsticks. You could do this with a knife, but this would take forever, and there's no way that you're gonna get the same accuracy. And I like to hold it a little bit of an angle to make sure that when they are coming out, they're coming out long, as opposed to holding the carrot this way, and then the matchstick's only gonna be like this long. And if you don't have one of these Japanese mandolins, I highly suggest getting one. Like I said before, I'm not a big gadget guy. I like to do stuff as easily and with as little equipment as possible, but that is a tool that's super useful and it's almost irreplaceable. The last thing we're gonna do is cut up the garnishes. We're not gonna use the whites for this recipe. I'll save those in a little jar of water and I'll do something else with those. But we are gonna trim off the tops of these greens. And now I'm gonna cut them really thinly and I'm gonna use them for a garnish. When I cut up scallions, I like to push them down a little bit and flatten them. It makes chopping them up a little bit easier. The leftover scallions, all I do is I take a little jar and I just put the scallions inside the water. And recently I've been actually just leaving these uncovered and just using them within a day or two. It can last for a little bit, but it always is best if you use them within a day. And I'll cut these up and I'll put these in some eggs or something. And before we head over to the stove and start cooking, one thing that I like to do, because of the amount of volume that we're gonna put of the cabbage and the onions, is I like to season these before they go in the pan with a little oil and some salt and pepper. So I'm gonna take some oil, I'm gonna put it over the top, and here I'm using olive oil, and I know people are like, you don't use olive oil with Asian cooking. This is just my go-to oil and the oil that I use basically whenever I can. So if you want to use a neutral oil like avocado oil or canola oil, go ahead and do that. But I like to use my olive oil for basically everything. And now we're gonna season with a little salt and some fresh ground black pepper. So now I'm gonna get in there with my hands and try to mix this up as best as I can before this goes inside the pan. And I like to do this like this because you can see the volume that we're gonna put inside there of cabbage and onions, and it's gonna be a lot inside the pan, and it's almost hard to get the oil and the seasoning everywhere initially. We could wait until later, but I like to season along the way, especially season early too. Okay, so now that this is seasoned and our prep is done, let's head over to the stove. First, let's check out the pan that I'm gonna use. So here I'm using my carbon steel pan. It's got a really high rim on it. I like the carbon steel because it heats up really well. It retains heat really well, and it's got a nice high rim so we could put a lot in there and it's gonna be able to hold it. So I'm gonna heat this up over a medium-high heat. One of the great things about carbon steel is how fast it heats up and how well it retains heat. One of the things that sucks about cast iron, it takes a long time for it to heat up. Carbon steel heats up in a fraction of the time, and it has a lot of the heat retention properties of cast iron, so we're gonna be able to get a nice caramelization on this cabbage and the onions, because that's really what makes a lot of flavor in this dish. So once this pan is hot enough, I'm gonna add just a little bit of oil. I'll move that around the pan, and if it's hot enough, the oil should smoke just a little bit. But now let's add our cabbage and our onions. And you can see it almost looks like too much, but once we're done cooking, you're gonna see how this has been reduced all the way down to not that much. So if it looks like too much, that's a good place to start. So what I wanna do is I wanna leave it, and I'm gonna move this around probably every 2 minutes, because I want a lot of the contact of the onions and the cabbage to just stay there, because one of the best parts about this recipe is how cabbage and onion caramelize, and then they add just really wonderful flavors that weren't there. If the pan's not hot enough or you move it around too much, it never gets that time to sear, and you'll see what I mean as this starts to cook. So now I'm gonna start to give this a mix, and you can see how we start to get a lot of these brown singes on the cabbage and the onion. Not only that, it smells fantastic. When that starts to happen, it's the same reaction that's happening when you cook a steak or a hamburger. You're getting that browning on the outside, and that's kind of what we're after. So now I'll just give this a mix, and I'll work what's on the bottom to the top and one from the outside to the inside. The cabbage and the onions will release lots of moisture, so generally it doesn't need any broth or water. Usually I just find that if I can just do this over the right temperature, I'll get the softening and I'll get the browning that I'm looking for. You can already see how this has already reduced a lot in volume. And so now every minute or two, I'll work the bottom. Look at that nice caramelization of the onions and the cabbage. I've done this in a cast iron pan, but I feel like I could fit more in here. When I do it in the cast iron pan, I never like how much I end up with. Once the volume of the cabbage and the onions has shrink back, I can actually use the pan, actually give it that saute motion and get the Nice charred cabbage from the bottom to the top. I find when I start doing that move too early, it goes everywhere because there's just so much in the pan. But look at all this like nice like brown bits that we start to get inside the pan. And I just keep cooking this until it like softens and we get just like nice speckling of like all like the brown charred like onions and cabbage. That's where a lot of the flavor in this amazing and super easy dish come from. Once this has softened a little bit and it's probably reduced by like half, I'm gonna add our carrots in. The onions and the cabbage I want soft. The carrots I want to like retain like a little bit of crunch. So I like to put those in just a little later. So they soften up, but not as much as the cabbage and the onions. And also carrots don't have the same properties as the onions and the cabbage, and they don't really get like charred too well. It's really hard to get a good char on a carrot. So after the carrots have cooked for a couple of minutes, let's add our last ingredient, the garlic. This only needs to cook for like 30, 45 seconds and just release the flavor into the vegetable mixture. Once you can smell that garlic cooking, I'm gonna shut the heat off. The carbon steel pan, just like a cast iron pan, it holds heat a lot. So even if I shut it off the heat, this thing is still cooking. So now let's add a little bit of sesame oil, a little low sodium soy sauce, and for some acidity, some rice vinegar. Give that a mix. And this dish is good to go. The last thing we're gonna do here is get some of those scallion greens and sprinkle these on top just for that nice pop of color and just like a fresh like onionish flavor. And now look how amazing and fast this dish came together. It looks fantastic. It smells even better. I wish I could get the smell to you at home, but this is just so easy and just a home run every single time. I've eaten this every single week for like probably like a couple of months, and I am still super excited to try this dish. So let's get like a nice big scoop of this. Now look how amazing these vegetables look. The onions, the cabbage, the carrots, the Asian smells that are coming over here, plus that char that we put on the onions and the cabbage. You know, when I was talking about that a lot, I really want to emphasize it. Like, you don't want to steam this. Like, you almost want to like cook it a little hard so you get those little charred spots. It really adds a lot of awesome flavor to this dish. It's not going to be hard to get a little bit of everything on one bite. This smells so good. This is going to be an epic bite. I'm gonna go out and say that this is the most economical and most delicious vegetable dish I have ever made. All of these things are super cheap, super common, and this is so good. This doesn't even have any protein in it. I can eat this just by itself. The onions, the cabbage, the carrots got a little bit of a crunch to it. Don't add those carrots too early, because if you add them too early, they're gonna soften up a little bit and then you're gonna lose that nice crunchy texture that you get with those. But this is absolutely fantastic. Cabbage right now is having such a moment, and I don't know if that's for everybody, but it's definitely for me, because the more I cook with cabbage and the more I use it, the more I like it and the more it's in every single day's vegetable rotation. This is so good. This has like Chinese takeout vibes, but it's like really healthy, and I made it myself, and generally I don't do well like trying to like recreate stuff I get in a Chinese food place. This is absolutely delicious. If you like this recipe video, hit like, drop me a comment, let me know how your fried Asian cabbage comes out, or just let me know what you thought about the video. If you haven't already, subscribe to my channel, get the notification bell on so you can find out when I drop new recipe videos. And if you're into cabbage recipes that are similar to this, check out my braised red cabbage. That is a really nice, but more like European, less Asian flavors. So I will see you there. Thank you.